What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Big Five Pod, episode number 104. And this is going to be the Big Five Classic recap. So we are very excited to bring you this one. I am, of course, your co-host, Kyle Morello. Next to me, co-host Jake Cope. Cope, we had a heck of a weekend with the Big Five Classic and some other games that we were both attending as well. But first and foremost, how are you?
We're good. We're good. Christmas is sneaking up on me. I had to do some shopping before we got on tonight. Yeah, it's sneaking up on me. Days are just flying. Conference play is going to start for Villanova next week. Hopefully, we're in the building for that. But yeah, time's flying. But we're good. Besides the weather being freezing outside, it was dreadful yesterday. It was pouring the whole day. I got poured on walking the train. We're good. College hoops on. Hard to be doing bad when that's the case.
Can't complain. Can't complain. Yeah, weather's definitely been a little weird, to say the least. But I guess that comes with the territory this time of year. But regardless, Cope, let's not waste too much time at the onset because we got some stuff we got to get into, namely the Big Five Classic. But of course, we cannot start this episode without your quick hitters. So go get that ball. Let's run this break. What do you got for me?
Yeah, gonna be a short one today. We'll just run a couple. We'll run the 2 minute drill, I guess. But hey, want to talk about the Women's Big Five Classic, the inaugural one that they decided to do this year at Finneran Pavilion on Villanova's campus. Penn playing LaSalle in the fifth place game. Penn won that one. St. Joseph's got beat pretty badly by Villanova at their place, and St. Joseph's being on the cusp of being a nationally ranked team and how much success they've had recently. Kind of a surprise to see them not in the Big Five championship game, but nonetheless, they beat Drexel to win third place. And Kyle, how about those Temple Owls and Diane Richardson going into not a neutral site? You had to play Villanova on their home floor to win the
Yeah,
Big
yeah.
Five championship. They sure did. Yeah, yeah, Kyle, they sure did. 76-62. Diane Richardson's Owls win the inaugural Big Five Classic, which I'm sure the banner will be hung at the Liacouras Center, but it would be funny if they hung it in the Finn because that's where the game was played. But want to highlight TR East from Temple, 26 points, 10 of 18 from the field. She won the Mel Greenberg Award for the most valuable player. I just want to give a quick shout out to not only Mel, but Aaron Bracey as well. We'll talk about him and his Jack Shore MVP award for the men's classic. But with what they're doing, Mel, who's covered, don't know him personally, but covering women's basketball for way longer than me and you have been alive. Really a national figure in the women's basketball space as far as media goes. I mean, heck, they got Aaron was saying they have an award for him at the Final Four for the women's tournament.
Yeah.
So to honor him the way they did, I think that is what is going to hopefully bring the Big Five back to some sort of prominence that it once was at. Let's honor the past. Let's honor the great Big Five figures and the great, in Mel's case, just a great basketball figure for what he's done for the women's game and giving it the exposure and giving it the press that it deserves. So shout out to them for creating that award and for doing this for both the men and the women's classic. But shout out to Temple. They will forever be able to say, Kyle, they were the first. They were the first Big Five women's classic champions. And I don't know if there's like if they're going to consider that a neutral site game because technically, like it was the Big
The home
Five
game for Nova.
championship game. Give Temple a road win for that if that's not the
Yeah.
case. Give them a road win. They went on into enemy territory, had to beat the home team on their own floor, and doing it decisively to win the Big Five Classic, the women's edition. Very cool. Very cool. We'll see how that ramps up in years to come, and hopefully not only the women's classic but the men's classic can continue to gain more attention. I read that the crowd wasn't what people wanted it to be at the women's classic, and hopefully as these teams get better and Temple continues to get better with Diane Richardson and the men, hopefully these programs continue to get better. Hopefully we see both Big Five classics continue to rise in popularity and amongst fan interest in the area. So that's our only quick hitter. Wanted to give that some love because the inaugural one just happened this past weekend. How about those Temple Owls? And now, Kyle, we can get into the men's classic that we were both at the entire day. We were there all day Saturday.
Damn right we were. Yeah, listen, so Cope, before we even get into the games themselves, let's, give people kind of painting a picture of the atmosphere and the environment that was going on at the Wells Fargo Center. So combined attendance for all three games was over 14,000, which I think that's a great showing. Obviously, it doesn't fill the arena. I don't think anyone's expecting the arena to be filled for any of the games, especially without nationally ranked teams. But good attendance, I think, overall. I think the Penn Drexel game was a little. lackluster, but it was a fifth place game. Drexel showed out, though, I will say. Shout out to Drexel student section. They were loud, they were proud. So definitely shout out to them. They're happy to be in the Big Five, you can tell. It's a really cool thing. The Temple Nova game I thought might have been the best attended game of the day. I don't know if you felt the same way, but I thought the crowd was great. I thought Villanova filled up their entire student section back up the wall of I don't know exactly what section that was. It was opposite of us. It was on the opposite end. Temple was behind us and in 118, and they filled up pretty well too. Then the championship game was probably about the same, maybe a little bit less than the third place game. So I think overall the environment was great. Obviously, always room for improvement, but I thought it was great. People were loud. The streamers were great. Other than Penn. I don't mean to hate on Penn right now. I don't. I don't. I love for Penn basketball. Cope. There were three streamers thrown, or at least three streamers that made the floor, and I think only one of them actually like unfolded from the role of the streamer. So I gotta get on the Penn student section a little bit here. Can we figure it out? Can we do better next time? I don't think I'm asking that much. Like I'm not saying everybody's going to be a baseball player. Not everybody has to be Patrick Mahomes out there. If you've seen that video of Kelsey Plum throwing the shirts in the stands after she got drafted in the W, like nobody's expecting it to be that. But can we at least get them unwrapped? It was sad. That's just the one thing I gotta say. But uh, despite all of this, the games were lackluster. And I think that's also fair to say too. It was three games that were decided by a minimum of 14 points, and that was the championship game. So, no, I'm sorry, 13 points was the fifth place game, 14 was the championship, and then the third place game was about a 30-point game. Uh, so the games themselves weren't great. Last year, obviously, we had some incredible games, including Khalil Brantley's game winner from half court and overtime. But overall, I think the event was a success. I know, Cope, we can probably have some points on things going forward, and we're going to talk about a couple things going forward. But first, your impressions of the day that was the Men's Big Five Classic.
Yeah, to start with attendance, I do think it was good, especially for the third place game and the championship game. You can point at the fifth place game, and Penn fans don't have a lot to be excited about right now, and I think that's probably why you saw the student section the way it was. I'm sure if they played in the championship game, it would have been a lot better, and you could say that for everybody because when I was at the Palestra for the Villanova game when they were on campus, like that place was damn near full, and there was a bunch of students that stormed the court. So just not a big reason for them to be excited right now. I mean, it's still a long season, but just what we've seen now, the streamer throw was bad.
It was
Like
really
I don't,
bad.
you didn't even need to stop the game. You probably just could have told like the mop guy under the basket to like quick grab it when they went down the other end. But besides that, like I've been impressed a ton with Drexel, not only their students but their alumni and their fans. The 2 years they've been there. I mean, they played in two fifth place games and they packed a bunch of people at the Wells Fargo Center both years. Like they're clearly excited. You can see that in the campus games with the atmospheres that was there. I was at the Temple game last year when they came to the DAC and it was sold out. So they're clearly excited. I do think the overall attendance was good though. Was good. I think that's a step in the right direction that it correct me. I don't know off the top of my head what it was last year, but had to have been last year or if not better. So I think that's a trend in the right direction. The streamers were great from everybody except Penn, and I'll stop raining on their parade now. But yeah, the basketball, like last year, we see an overtime half court game winner. We see Drexel take down a nationally ranked Villanova in a close game. We didn't get like that excitement this year with the games, unfortunately. So I don't want to put a damper on the event, but that's just what the fact was. Like the basketball wasn't great, but I think everything else around it was good. I think everything else around it was good. There was a ton of press there, and Zach Spikert even said in the press conference, like, "Hey, like, look, this needs to be a premier day on the college basketball calendar going forward, and like, look at all the press that was there to give
Yeah.
exposure to all six programs." So a step in the right direction for sure. One thing I want to say, because we just had Phil Martelli on in our last episode, and he had said that he wants to see a dinner or a luncheon for the Big Five Hall of Fame. And it's cool during a championship game when you expect the most people to be there. You bring up all the Big Five Hall of Fame inductees. You get to honor them. I was at the LaSalle Temple game at Glazier when John Giannini was honored at halftime. And that's all well and good. But I think we need more than that. And to kind of hammer home the importance of just how big of an achievement this is in such a storied basketball city, a basketball tradition. It's cool. We should still do that. You should still honor the inductees at halftime, but give them a luncheon and a dinner as well to give a speech, to have a bunch of other Big Five Hall of Famers and colleagues and players and coaches that these inductees have been around. Give them the opportunity to accept such a big award and achievement like that around a bunch of other people who are in the Big Five Hall of Fame and a bunch of people that have helped them on their way to get there. So in totality, liked it. Hopefully the basketball is better next year. We'll get into more of that when we talk about next year and the pod switching. But overall was pleased with it, Kyle. I really was.
Yeah, I agree. And to go back to your point about what Phil had said to us, Cope, I think that might be on us to make that happen. I think, I've been thinking about it since we've had that podcast with him and Jared, and why not? You know what I mean? Like it would be awesome. And even if like for the women's side as well, if we invited all the teams, obviously schedule dependent, of course, but you know, past Big Five Hall of Famers, of course, that are still with us and that are inducted in it, and anyone who media, who's relevant and wants to attend this event, but like they should be honored, whether it's a luncheon, a dinner, a gala, a charity event, whatever the case may be, they should be honored because, like you said, the halftime honoring it was nice. They should do that anyway. I'm glad that that happened, that recognition happened, and they kind of did a little something during timeouts for each candidate for not candidate for each inductee at some point during all of the games, and they got their own individual moments, which was cool. But there should be something more than that. There should be a more intimate event where they can be celebrated and they can talk, which is the main thing, honestly. I think they should be able to, say some words about their time in the Big Five and what it means. So, Cope, why don't we why don't we figure this out? Why don't we try to hit up the powers who be? I don't know exactly who that is at the very moment, but let's figure this out and hopefully next year we can make it happen. So, if you guys are seeing this right now, hold us to it. Obviously, we have about 12 months to go, but hold us to it because I think this would be really cool. And
We will
because Phil,
sponsor it, but I don't know how much money we can commit.
I think I have $5 Canadian in my wallet.
I
That's
think I might have like 25 American dollars. You can have
okay.
that. I'm happy to donate that.
Yeah. I mean, I'll figure something out.
Financially, we're going to need more people, but we will put our name on it.
We'll put our name on it. Why not? Why not? We're trying to do this for the Big Five, so that's and Phil Martelli told us to, so can't really argue with that. But anyway, also, of course, we have to congratulate St. Joe's on winning the Big Five this year. Obviously, an incredible accomplishment. They have now gone back to back for the first time since 02, 03, 03, 04. Obviously, we know about the latter season, and of course, a small plug here. Make sure you go buy Aaron Bracey's book if you haven't already. Um, but yeah, it was a great accomplishment for them. The game was close for a little while there. Demetrius Lilly was playing out of his mind until he got a hand wrist injury. Although apparently he will be available, or at least on the plane for the North Carolina game on Saturday, which is great to hear. So yeah, Cope. I don't know if we need to go over every single game. Obviously, the fifth place game was a very low scoring. Drexel tied their season low, which they ended up tying again against VCU, and we'll go over it in a little bit. But it wasn't pretty. I don't know if we need to talk a whole lot about that Battle of 33rd Street there, but Drexel did win that one. So two Big Five wins for them in 2 years, both at the Big Five Classic. And then the Villanova Temple game was a blowout, and Villanova is looking a lot better, I think is the bottom line of that. So you can talk about that if you want. But then the championship, of course, was a good game for a while. LaSalle fought. I think going in, we knew that they were the probably a little bit less talented team. They also didn't have Jaleel White in this one. Demetrius Lilly gets hurt just after halftime. Eric Acker didn't play, so they were shorthanded, which is not to make excuses, of course, but it is fair. It's something that has to be pointed out. Overall, I thought they fought. Deuce Jones was phenomenal. I know you're high on him. I definitely am now too. So, Cope, your thoughts on, the overall games of the day, besides just the atmosphere, the overall, on the court things that happen.
Yeah. And I do want to touch on each game, and I'll give you the chance to do it as well. But I think it's important that we do touch on each one.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
been really impressed with Drexel. I've been saying that, continued to be in this game. This game was tied at halftime. It was 30-30 at halftime, but Penn just 17 points in the second half. Nick Spinoso, Ethan Roberts, the only two players for the Quakers to score in the second half. Penn just a hair under 34% from the field, 22% from three. Just didn't make shots. And I'll offer some stats globally, kind of season wide on that in a little bit. But Drexel, look, it was a low scoring game for them, but hey, Cole Hargrove, man,
He's good.
this guy came out of nowhere. I mean, he really took that seasoning in the 2 years that he spent in the program playing behind Garfield Turner, playing behind Amari Williams, and this guy's ready to go. He is his fourth double-double of the season, 17.7 to 10 from the field. He had two big dunks in the first half, 13 rebounds, three blocks. He has been a very, very nice surprise for Drexel, holding down the middle. He's blocking shots. He can step out and hit a three. Really good athlete. You look at him, he's built really well. Continue to be really impressed by him. And even on a day where Kobe McGee was 4-12, still had 15. Yame Butler took just 7 shots. He had 12 points. They still win by double digits. Defensively in the second half, did not give up a lot of clean looks to Penn. Just about everything was contested. Zach Spiker gave a shout out to assistant coach Will Chavis in the press conference, said that he had to scout for this game. And the second half, they locked down. And when I asked Zach Spiker about the defense, he said that they locked in. They were terrific in this game, especially in the second half. You hold a team to 47 points, Kyle, you're probably going to win a whole lot more than you lose. So
Yeah.
continue to be impressed with Drexel. Penn still figuring things out here. I'll offer my stats now on Penn because the three ball when you Steve Donahue was such a good offensive coach, he's going to generate looks for shooters, and they have plenty of capable ones on the team. So if you look at, and I'll bring up five guys here, Sam Brown being number one because he shot 43% from three as a freshman, which is insane in the Ivy League when you're usually playing against older guys. He's shooting just 25% this season. Ethan Roberts shot 40% as a freshman when he was at Army, 35%. Still good this year, but his numbers are down a bit. He's also had more offense on his plate. He's putting up more threes and more shots than he did in his season at Army 2 years ago. Michael Zanoni only played in a handful of games last year, so I kind of dismissed that because he just didn't see much playing time before his injury. Nearly a 36% three-point shooter as a freshman. He's at 27% this year. Nicholas Polanowski, very pretty jump shot. Guy's got a really, really good, great form, great release. 18 games last year, so maybe not as big a sample size as you're seeing from these other guys. 47% last year from three in limited minutes, Kyle. 13% from three this year. George Smith shooting 26.3% from three. He shot 26.2% as a freshman, and he's a senior now. So you're just seeing, I don't know what it is because they're going to get open looks. And when I watch them play, I do think they get a share of good ones that for shooters as good as the ones that Penn has. Like you'll take that look any day of the week. They're just not going in. That's what the bottom line is. They have to be due for some positive regression at some point. You look at Sam Brown and Ethan Roberts, like these are not good shooters. These are not like okay shooters. Like these are great shooters. These are 40% three-point shooters. And the ball is just not going in the basket for them right now. So I know we've been harsh on them because the results have not been there, but I gotta imagine these shots got to start falling, and the water's going to find its level at some point because these guys are too good to be shooting the percentages that they are now. These percentages do not reflect at all how good of shooters they are. So hopefully that's something to be optimistic for Penn. But this was another game where the threes just weren't falling; they just weren't. So I'll touch on Villanova Temple, and then I'll let you run with it for a little bit, but. Hey, Villanova will quickly touch on they won against Fairleigh Dickinson last night, riding a now 4-game win streak going into Big East play. This is exactly what they needed after losing to St. Joe's, after losing a close one to Maryland. The Virginia game wasn't good. Obviously, I was at the game where they gave up 90 to Columbia and they lost at home. So after a bit of a bumpy start, they've ripped off 4 in a row. That includes this big win over Temple, a win over Cincinnati, and they have been shooting the ball very well in this 4-game win streak. 19 of 30, scorching hot from deep. Honestly, you could just call the game right there. Temple could have played really well, but if your opponent's going to shoot that well from three, you'd pretty much have to match it to win. Villanova almost 60% from the field as well, and Eric Dixon just continues to dominate. And even though he had 20, I say only 24 points because he just does it easy. He just does it so easy. 24 points, 7 of 12 from the field, 5 of 8 from three, continues to shoot the three ball at a high level. Lugo Poplar, 18 in this game. Longino, hey, really good offensive game from him. He buried two of his three threes at 14. And then Tyler Perkins was awesome in this game. Over this win streak they had, he shot the three ball well, 12 points off the bench, 4 or 5 from three. So Nova, a really good win for them. And they've just been playing really, really well. They've been the more aggressive team, the team that plays harder, that locks in defensively through the 4 game win streak. So really, really impressed with them. What say you?
And Cope, you didn't even mention Jameer Brickus, who had 7 assists on the night. Only 7 points. Not that it wasn't necessarily needed. I mean, you just mentioned 4 or 5 guys that scored in double figures who hit a couple threes. Uh, but Jameer Brickus, I know I always mention him and I love mentioning him because I love his game. Uh, but he has been the last few games, more so the entire season so far, but the table setter that we were promised coming into this year. And you see how it's set up everybody else. I mean, obviously, 63.3% from three is not sustainable. We know that. We're not saying that. 19 from 30 is crazy. It's better than what they shot from the field at 58.5, but they can be a really good three-point shooting team, especially when you have someone. Now, obviously, Jameer Briggs can, he can shoot threes pretty well. He can make them pretty well, but he sets up the other guys when he's driving, kicking out, people relocating, people focusing on Eric Dixon. Like you see this. Obviously, Dixon's going to get his always 5 for 8 from three is great. Um, Tyler Perkins being 4 or 5 from three, he was knocking them down like crazy. Will Poplar, I forgot exactly how many threes he took in this one, but I have it right now actually. 4 of 7 from three, another really really good one. And then Longino, you said 2 of 3 too. So like this is kind of the Villanova offense that we were promised, where you have all these guys who can shoot, and it's hard to focus in on one or two people when you have this many people knocking down shots. And I'll use an example right now, even though the last night of this recording this, they had an embarrassing loss to the Hawks in the NBA Cup, but the Knicks so far this season have been the most efficient offense in the NBA, and part of the reason they can do that is because they have so many people who can shoot. I mean, it's not just Jalen Brunson who's shooting around 40% from three. It's Cat who's shooting 45% from three. Now, I know you're not going to get 7 footers shooting threes necessarily in college right now, but I would say that Eric Dixon's that version of that for Villanova. But then you also have people like OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges who are in the corners and waiting for the kickouts. You have Deuce McBride's off the bench, which I know Longino starts, but kind of like that. Or I guess that could be more equated to Tyler Perkins in a way too. Like you just have guys, and when you have this like 5 out offense, I'm not necessarily saying that Villanova plays exactly that way, but the point I'm trying to make is when you have an offense that's that efficient and that many people who can score from all different angles, it makes it really, really hard to guard. So if they can keep this up, and then you have Brickus who, sure, he's going to distribute, but he can also be that guy too who's knocking him down. It's hard to guard and it's hard to stop, and they're getting hot at the right time. And it's really exciting because they had a rough start to the season, as we uh, well documented at this point, and we definitely, had our fair criticisms of that, but now they're gelling. And this is, I think, kind of what we didn't fully see last year. And it's exciting to see it now, especially after Cincinnati, especially after this 30-point win or 29-point win over Temple in this. And then, of course, their win over Fairleigh Dickinson as well. So it's been great to see. Um, Hopefully they keep it going into Big East play starting next week. Cope, of course, we get the championship game as well, which we can, I know I mentioned it already, some things from there, but we can go over it again. Uh, St. Joe's was just the better team. It was close for a while, but the talent ended up showing out in the end. Eric Reynolds second, 24 points on 10 of 18 from the field, probably one of his more efficient games of the year that he's had. Xavier Brown, 21 points on 7-11, 3 of 4 from three, 6 assists, 4 steals. He was the Jack Scheuer Award winner that Aaron Bracey collected and gave out. Um, and he definitely had some good things to say about that as well. Eric Reynolds was named the MVP of the Big Five Classic by the Big Five Classic folks. And of course, we mentioned, Dimitri Lilly, 12 and 6 in the first half. He might have won this award if he played this full game. And of course, LaSalle won. Unfortunately, had a hand injury very early in the second half. Jaleel White, not sure why exactly he didn't play, but he did not suit up in this one. And of course, Eric Acker was eligible for the first time, but he did not suit up as well. So a lot going on here, but this might have been the best game of the day, I think. Cope, what you say?
I want to apologize because I want to make a couple points on Temple before we go. We did not speak on them. I know it was a blowout, and I know it wasn't pretty
Fair,
at times,
fair.
but they did not have Quante Berry in this game with a hand injury that we just kind of it's look, in college it's hard. You don't really find out unless you're like unless you're like Power Four where a lot of national people are covering you as well. And even so with that, like it's just hard to get injury news. So we find out really the day of that Quante Berry is a hand injury that he sustained in practice last week and was out for this game. Adam Fisher said in the presser, like, hey, we're without Quante and we're without Lynn Greer. Like we didn't really have our two ball handlers. And not that Mashburn isn't capable, but that's a dude that's wired to score and play alongside a point guard. So they clearly struggled without that. And then when we talked to Phil and Jared, Phil said, well, who's the third player going to be in the game? Jared brought up it could be Steve Settle or Zion Stanford. And in the first half, it looked like he was going to be right with Steve Settle, who had 9 at halftime, but kind of went cold in the second half a bit. And offensively, like they just didn't have a point guard to kind of be the straw that stirred the drink for them. It's a lot of dribbling with Mashburn and Stanford. And look, like they needed to score in this game without Quante being on the floor with 18 and 15 against LaSalle in the previous game. So missing those guys hurt them, but hopefully Quante Berry's healthy for Hofstra Sunday. They're going to get Lynn Greer back, him and Chris Clark being reinstated from their suspensions after the Holy Family game. So hopefully they will be back. But I also I did not want to pass this by. Like, I get this is a 29-point game. Need to highlight how well Aiden Tobiasen played in this game
Yes, completely forgot
because
about that.
he had 5 steals. He played a season high 27 minutes up to that point. He played 31 against Holy Family last night, but up to this game, he played a season high 27 minutes. He was everywhere. He was active, especially on the defensive end, guarding people. He played a terrific game. And even in a game that wasn't close, that guy was still playing. That guy was still competing on both ends, especially on defense. And I'd like to see this guy. He in this game and then he played well in the Holy Family game as well. He earned himself more playing time as a young player on this team, and I'm excited to see what he can do because that was a very encouraging game that he had. Because again, game wasn't close in the second half. That guy was still playing his tail off. So I wanted to give him a shout out and show him some love because he played very well in this game and deserved to get a highlight here.
Yeah.
But anyway, St. Joe's LaSalle, you brought up the Meach Lilly injury, and I think that's really where the game turned because he played so well in the first half, had 3 threes, was rebounding well. He's really found a home here, and good for him because he can step out and space the floor like he has the freedom to do that with Fran Dunphy and LaSalle. And he played a great game. That was as good as he's played, and he's had some good ones for LaSalle so far in any game this season. He was terrific. And he goes down, he drives to the basket, goes down awkwardly, falls on that wrist, and didn't check back into the game. And it's almost like the air kind of got sucked out of the building for LaSalle a little bit because they were playing really well. And this was a close game at halftime. But when you bring in Mac Etienne, he brings some length and maybe a bit more shot blocking than Meach does, but you really miss that offensive element and you miss that floor spacing. And not having Jaleel White either for an off the court issue that everybody was mum about. It seemed like it happened pretty much like the day of the game, which is unfortunate. He wasn't able to compete in this game because he would have helped a lot. But Deuce Jones really stepped up. And McKeithen did not shoot the ball well in the first half. I think he only had 2 points, which, I mean, he's been playing at a nuclear pace right now, has been terrific. And Deuce Jones, I asked Dunphy in the presser, I said, he was a lightning rod for you guys on both ends. He was terrific, 19 in this game, and it almost felt like he checked in and was like, okay, well, like, if Meach goes out, like, I gotta be the guy to kind of bring us back. He was awesome in this game. He was aggressive. Corey McKeithen said in the presser after, look, this guy's a dog. And I feel like that term gets thrown around loosely. This guy's a freshman. He's young. And that guy's a dog. Dunphy was like, hey, that's one competitive dude. That is
Yeah.
one competitive dude. So he's already shown how good of a player he can be now He will continue to do that, and he's going to be a damn good player at LaSalle now and in the years to come. I'll touch on St. Joe's before I kick it back to you. Eric Reynolds has been struggling shooting the ball this year. Really good in this game. 10 of 18 from the field at 24. And when him and Xavier Brown can combine for 45 points, probably going to result in a win for St. Joe's when those two guys can get going. X Brown, 6 assists, 4 steals in this game as well. He had a terrific game. And those guys they were the main scorers, and that's kind of all they needed. Had over half their points, but when you have two guys who are some of the best scorers in the Big Five and in the A10, firing on all cylinders like that, they're gonna win more than they lose, even though it's been a bit of a bumpy start, excuse me, for St. Joe's. But impressive by them. That's two in a row, two banners at the Wells Fargo Center. Big congratulations to them. I know it's a new era of the Big Five, and you only play 3 games instead of the round robin. But hey, champs of the city. They had the T-shirts after the game that said "Our City" on them. Big accomplishment for that. They
Yeah.
should be very proud.
Yeah. I mean, they're Big Five champs. Nothing you could say about it. Bless you. All right. Well, we're going to move on already to next year's Big Five Classic Cup because why I think this was while we were there. The Philadelphia Inquirer's Jonathan Tannenwald reported that the pods are being switched up next year, which is that necessarily wasn't going to be new news. I think that's something that we had expected, and they had said when they introduced this format that every 2 years or so the pods are going to get switched up. The pods themselves are a little surprising to me, so I'm going to read them off right now, Cope, and then we can talk about it a little bit. So Pod 1, Villanova, Temple, and LaSalle. And Pod 2 is St. Joe's, Penn, and Drexel. Personally, I think Pod 1 is a little front loaded, or the loaded of the pods. I think uh, this is not to disrespect Penn and Drexel, but Drexel's played in the fifth place game 2 years in a row now. And Penn, obviously, this year is not going great. They have been a lot better in the past, but I think in terms of like the name recognition of the programs, at least, the first pod probably has three of the top four. So, or if not, I mean, I know St. Joe's and LaSalle obviously are in the same conference, but uh, I definitely thought this was interesting. Also, you're breaking up Villanova and St. Joe's, which I think people very much value the Holy War. And you're also not having Temple and St. Joe's together, which this year was the first time they didn't play since what was it, Cope, the 30s?
Yeah, 1934.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I'm happy that Penn and Drexel, will be together in the same pod. I like the Battle of 33rd Street not just being, potentially at the Big Five Classic, so that's at least something. But they're all rivals. They're all rivals. I mean, you're gonna get some type of matchup like Temple and LaSalle playing. Obviously, the Battle of Broad Street there is great again. But I am a little iffy on the new pods. Cope, what do you think?
Yeah, I was a little iffy about him as well. And first of all, I'd like to thank Jonathan Tannenwald. He hopped in our spaces on Sunday,
Yes,
and he was being the guy that broke the story, explained the logic behind it. And because my first knee-jerk reaction is, well, we don't get the Holy War. And I think a lot of people felt the same way. But once I heard him kind of explain some of the thought process and potentially some of the outcomes we could see for the triple header, I started to come back down to earth on it a little bit. And it's funny, he was asking some coaches about it in the press conference. I think he broke it that day to the point where they hadn't even seen it yet.
I know he
But
broke it to Fran Dunphy because he was very not confused by it, but he was like, yeah, I don't know.
yeah, but still, breaking it there is pretty cool to do it at the Classic. But you can look at this and be like, hey, you don't get Temple, you're not guaranteed Temple St. Joseph's. Hell, you're not even guaranteed a Holy War. But when it comes down to the triple header, if you want to maximize the attendance and you want to maximize the atmosphere there, I don't think there's a better way to do it than to have the Holy War be the championship game. To have it not be guaranteed that you still get it, and it could be for the Big Five championship. You saw how Villanova showed up for the third place game. They didn't really show up too well for the fifth place game last year, but
But I get it at the same time.
yeah, I get it at the same
Yeah.
time. Like maybe fans aren't too excited to play Drexel, who they maybe have never seen play before, but they're excited for the third place game to go up against Temple that they hadn't had in 2 years. And if they were to have a Holy War championship game, I think you could damn near sell the place out. I think that would generate enough fan interest from both schools, but also just Big Five fans as well, that even if they stayed for the fifth or the third place game, would want to stay for that one too. So
Honestly,
I
even
think
Temple
that's the
Joe's too. That would be like
exactly,
a
and
very well
that's
attended.
yeah, that's not a bad consolation prize here, but you are putting a lot into St. Joe's getting there for a third straight time. And then you're putting a lot of pressure on Villanova and Temple to make it there as well to potentially maximize your attendance for the championship game. So if I look at the pods, I'm a little iffy on it. I think Penn and Drexel should just play each other anyway every year, regardless if they're in the same pod, because they literally walk to the games and it's the closest two D1 schools are to each other. But I started to come around on the pods when I saw what we could have as a triple header in a championship game that would garner some buzz, that would garner a lot of attention, and I think would start to spark that fan interest again. Because I think if you're not guaranteed the Holy War at Temple St. Joe's and you get it in the championship, people would be more incentivized to come out for it. So the more I think about it, the more I like the idea, even if you're not guaranteed a Temple Joe's or Temple Villanova. I think the chances are good that we get one of them.
I think they're very good. Yeah, I mean, those are very good points. And that, if it's setting up for the Big Five Classic to be extremely well attended and a lot of buzz around it, of course I'm going to be for it. However, I also put stock into the campus games as well, and those are fun. Now, there also comes to scheduling issues that have come, at least this year, with some of those campus games, like the Holy War being at 5 p.m. on a Tuesday. Didn't agree with that. I don't know if that's, something that they're considering doing again, whether it's, Villanova Temple, maybe being the premier game of, the pod play per se, but don't think Big Five games should be on a Tuesday at 5 p.m. I think it's just bad scheduling. And you want people to attend these games. You want to bring the life of this back into the city. Can we at least get it at 7 if it's going to be on a weekday so people can attend and not have to rush home from work or take off work early or whatever it is. I don't think that's too much to ask, but uh
That's definitely the fault of the TV people, not us.
has to oh no, 100, not blaming the schools. Not blaming the schools, but
Yeah. Also, Hagen
uh
was great that night too. I wasn't
yeah,
there, but the atmosphere on TV, they still drew. That's probably the one game that they will sell out for. They probably will for LaSalle as well, but that's the one game you knew that regardless, like people are going to show up for.
exactly. Exactly. And you saw the Temple LaSalle game on a Saturday, late afternoon. Still a good time slot though. Great attendance. And you were there for that one. Great attendance. So that's just another thing too. But Cope, you did have this idea that I definitely want to bring up. And I think I forget exactly who you were talking about this with at the Big Five Classic, but I do remember it being discussed. Uh, how about a doubleheader at the Palestra at some point for pod play? I think, obviously we had the doubleheader not last year, but 2 years ago, that didn't include Villanova, but the other four teams at the time. I don't know the exact logistics of it, but there probably should be more than one Big Five game played at the Palestra. If you're not going to put the Classic there, and I understand it because there's a lot of money that the Wells Fargo Center can make, you would not get 14,000 total people to be at the Palestra because it doesn't fit that much, not nearly as much. But how can we make this happen where we get more than one game at the Palestra per year? Because we've talked about it at length on this podcast, obviously, but the Palestra is the Big Five. Even though it's Penn's home, and I get that. And, if they wanted to take that out of it for, having more home games be at the arenas of the actual schools, I get that 100%. But there should be something where the Plush hosting more than just or Penn's one game, whether that's against Drexel or St. Joe's next year. It should be more than that. So, what do you think could be a potential solution for that?
Yeah, well, this isn't something new that I've talked about. I want to give Aaron Bracey a plug on his pod because he got to interview Dr. John Giannini, also Big Five Hall of Famer now. So
Yep.
clap for Dr. John. But Dr. John had this idea that here's the thing, it's tough with the schools because you look at Drexel and like, hey, the Big Five campus game is going to be their biggest draw of the year.
Yeah.
LaSalle playing Temple at their place, at their new place, that was their biggest. That was going to be their biggest draw of the year. So you don't want to give up the campus games because, especially for Drexel and all the excitement, or it just bottom line, like because there's not as many and you don't play the round robin, there's more emphasis, I think, put on the campus games, and you see that they're better attended throughout the schools, but especially for LaSalle and Drexel that play in smaller arenas, that's a big time draw for them, and they can sell the place out easy. So you'd have to give that up. But John Giannini's point was if they can get over that, if you can give up a home game, well, the next year you'd also give up a road game. Like you need teams to agree to, hey, for one stretch of 2 years with the way the pods are set, we will give up a home game. The teams that we're playing will give up a home game so that we can play at the Palestra, do it on a Friday or a Saturday, just like old times, and we can go from there. But that's the thing is, are the schools going to be okay with not getting the gate revenue and getting the tickets and getting the crowd
Yeah.
draw that they would for the campus game? So that's where the decision gets hung up, is on that. But I do think it's possible. I do think it's possible that, and Dunphy said this when we went to the Big Five press conference when they announced the new format, we have to honor the Palestra. This would be a great way to do it, to not just have Penn's one campus game be the one Palestra game of the year. Heck, guess what? Penn can be one of those games. You can have Penn be one of the games in the doubleheader. You just need some commitment from other schools to be okay with, hey, for a 2 year stretch, we're gonna give up a home, we're gonna give up one home game, and the team that we're playing is gonna give up one as well. That's what it comes down to, but I certainly think it's possible that would be the way to honor the Palestra. We'll see if that happens.
I think as well. Or even, not having, not talking about basketball per se, but having that luncheon or something that we talked about maybe be there. I don't know if that's something that's possible either, but yes, there should be a way to honor the Palestra for the Big Five Classic every year. It should just be Penn's one home game. I do like the idea that you said about, teams agreeing to give up a home game one year and a road game next year to make it work. Also, like you said, the problem is it's this.
Hmm.
It's this. And as mad as you can be about it being at the Wells Fargo Center, everything involved with that, potentially these teams not wanting to play games at the Palestra for that, it all comes down to money. And that's, the bottom line. And it's unfortunate. I get it because these programs need money to survive and operate. And we would be very sad if they did not. Not that it would be off of one game, but that's the bottom line. So unfortunately, I don't know if that is possible. Might be something else to add to the list that we can try to figure out, Cope. We can try to talk to the powers that be, but that would be something, and I think it would be a great way to, honor the Big Five, honor the Palestra, because there is no Big Five without the Palestra. And that's the bottom line of that. All right, Cope, last couple points before we get off here. Not that we need to do a deep dive on all of these games. I was at one, you were at one, and then of course we talked about the Temple Holy Family game, which they're not even a D1 team. I don't know if we need to
Hmm.
really, really talk about it. Temple put up 110 points. I think it was the third time they scored that much in program history. So that's your note on that. Uh, they they played really well against a team they should have played really well against. So I can start, at least, because we can go chronological here. On Monday, I got the chance to go to the Siegel Center at VCU to see them take on Penn, which was awesome. It wasn't a completely packed house, obviously, because Penn's not exactly the most quality opponent right now that they've had and that they will have in the A10. But really cool arena, first and foremost, just want to get out of the way. But yeah, I don't really want to spend a lot of time on this either. Uh, Dylan Williams was taken out of the starting lineup for this game. George Smith and Nicholas Polanowski started alongside Sam Brown, Ethan Roberts, and Nick Spinoza, of course. It was ugly on both sides. VCU far and away did not play their best game that we've seen them play on TV, in person. They did not play like a team that was expected to win the A10 and be a tournament team and, maybe even be in those upper echelons of seeds potentially. A team that could be considered nationally ranked at some point this season if they continue to play well. They didn't play that way. They still won by 19 points. They still held Penn to their tied for season low of 47 points, which they, of course, set for the first time against Drexel on Saturday. Both teams shot under 40%. VCU at 39, Penn at 36, and VCU out rebounded the Quakers by 13, which I think was the difference here. The second chance opportunities were plentiful for the Rams. So not a great showing by Penn, not a great showing by VCU, but they did have the athletes and the bodies to get a very comfortable victory at home. And it was definitely very cool to be on have boots on the ground for that. I didn't cover the game. I wasn't credentialed, but I was there. I bought tickets with my friend who lives about an hour away from there, which was great. And we got to sit there and enjoy the Sequel Center. Cope, highly recommend you get there at some point. We should definitely take a trip. It's about 5 hours from the city, I think, around there. So it's definitely not like close, but it's not far, and it's definitely something feasible. So at some point soon, we might have to, maybe not this year, but at some point soon, we might have to get down there. But Cope, you were also had boots on the ground at Hagen Arena for a very interesting game. Take it away. What'd you see?
So, Kyle, I have to apologize real quick because I do want to make a point on the Penn game because I was
Okay.
watching on TV. They had 16 turnovers in this game, but that's what VCU does. This is a very
Yeah.
good defense. When Ryan Odom got hired, I talked about how great of an offensive coach this guy was. And not that he had bad defenses at Utah State by any means, but really good offensive coach. Great offense for shooters. They've been very good. They've been a better defensive team than they have been offensively since he's been in the 2 years that he's been at VCU. So 12th in turnover percentage, number one for effective field goal percentage. Like that's what they do. It's tough inside the arc, and they force a bunch of turnovers. So that's just what VCU does. And look, it was not their best game, not by any means. Didn't shoot it great, and they still won by the margin that they did. But that's why when we spoke to Dave Hanley, when we previewed the A10, it was pretty much unanimous. We all thought that VCU could win the A10 championship this year and go to the tournament. Terrific coach, experience, guards, scoring. There's a whole lot to like about this group. And I have to highlight another freshman that maybe the game wasn't so close. I really like this AJ Levine for Penn.
He was getting battered by this VCU team. There were, first of all, I don't, not that I want to harp on the refs too much. Second half, there were some very questionable calls. Steve Donahue was getting pretty upset. A lot of those went against AJ Levine. I'm not saying he had the greatest game in the world, uh, but he's gonna be something. He's tough. He gets in there. He was defending. He was not trying to get pushed around by these VCU players. He held his own. I was very impressed, and he was getting heckled too by the fans, which was funny. They're rowdy down there, but yeah, I was very very impressed with him.
Yeah, I like this guy a lot. He fouled out of this game too. I mean, hey,
Yeah.
even in a game that wasn't close, that guy was still playing is a pest on the ball, trying to blow up screens, blow up dribble handoffs. I like what I see from this guy. And he had to have played football or wrestle in high school. Like he's very well built for a freshman
Yes.
as well. But impressed with this guy. Impressed with this guy. 19 good minutes. I know it was a 19-point loss, but 19 good minutes from AJ Levine. I hope to see him get some more minutes as well. Because even as a young player, I like what this guy has, and they especially need his defense. Penn is going to need his defense badly. So impressed with him. But I'll touch on Charleston and St. Joe's. It's a good Charleston team. I know Pat Kelsey's not there anymore. Chris Mack is probably just as good of a replacement as you could get for Charleston.
Yeah.
For Charleston to go to the CAA, step out of the media role he was doing at the Field of 68 to come back into coaching, and they got a good team. They got a good team. He brings back Ante Brizovic, who's probably going to be the player of the year in the CAA this year. And St. Joe's did a good job on him. They did 6 of 17 from this game. Now he scored 17 points, but he also had 4 turnovers. Justice Ajabo, Rasheer Fleming, they did a good job of making him hesitate, making him pick up his dribble, traveled once. Like they did a good job of maintaining their ground and making stuff tough for him. So for a really good back to the basket player, and I asked Billy about this after the game, and Billy Lang said like we haven't seen a true back to the basket center like this in probably a year or two. Because Deron Holmes could shoot the three and do a bunch of stuff. Like haven't seen a true old school back to the basket, really soft touch center like Ante Brizovic. So they did a good job on him. Billy Lang spoke like, hey, defensively, they were really good at times in this game. They were probably good enough defensively to win this game. Rasheer Fleming had a career high 26, 10 of 14 from the field, 4 of 6 from the 3-point line. He was awesome. Eric Reynolds had an off game, though, and there was some timely turnovers at the end. Charleston, 13 fast break points in this game that just allowed this game to slip away from St. Joe's. St. Joe's leading for over 32 minutes in this one,
Yeah.
and they just let it slip away at the end. AJ Smith for Charleston made some really big buckets. He had a putback where there was a switch on defense by St. Joe's, and it just got to be like the guy that was switched on to AJ Smith was a smaller guy. I believe it was Simpson, and just with a bigger guy like that and a rebound that goes up, he was able to get a putback in an and one. Charleston 13-13 from the line in this one too. They definitely sealed the deal there. But St. Joe's played a good game for the most part. They're up 11 with 11 minutes left, and it's just some timely turnovers for them and some second half shooting that wasn't as good as it was in the first half that let this one slip away. So it's disappointing because their at-large chances probably out the window now, and if they're not out the window, Kyle, they are hanging on by the thinnest of threads with home losses to Central Connecticut State, Princeton now, and Charleston's not a bad team, and Princeton's not a bad team by any means. But these games can be resume boosters for you, but they can also be quite the crusher when you lose a true home game like this. So it's disappointing because they played well. They were up seven at halftime, but there was just some, Eric Reynolds in this game, 2 of 10, 0 for 6 from three, and he's having a statistically, he's having a year that's very uncharacteristic of him, who's a flamethrower from all parts of the court. They got to get him going as he goes through a slump right now. If he has anything but a 2 for 10 game, Kyle, they walk out there with the win. Also, they were 5 of 10 from the free throw line as well, which I don't usually harp on. But hey, like
You
that
gotta hit
second
him.
half, Rasheer was 2 of 5 in this game, and all I do is speak the guy's praises. But there was just some that like, hey, there's one with 40 seconds left. He makes one. This is a 2-point game now, not a 3-point game, and they were inbounding it from the side. It was a tough place to get a shot. Xavier Brown put up a really, really tough shot, but there was only a couple seconds left. So it's just little things like that that matter in this. But they played it. They did, man. They played a good game for most of this, and that's what's the most disappointing part is that I don't think I can look at one thing in particular besides turnovers and be like, wow, it was this, and this that hurt them. For a lot of it, it was good. They they just let it slip away for what would have been a good win over who I think is going to be the CAA champ, them or Towson. So disappointing that they couldn't ride the momentum off the Big Five championship, but it's a good Charleston team that they lost to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they've been toward the top of the CAA for a few years now. Obviously, coaching change as well. But like you said, Chris Mack is it's a pretty good replacement for Pat Kelsey. I don't. It's it's about as good as you can get. So yeah, they're a wagon, and this is still a game though. If you're St. Joe's, you just have to have. You're winning the entire game for the most part. You're at home. You're just coming off winning the Big Five championship. You gotta have it. Gotta have it. There's no other excuses about that. Um, Cope, speaking of the NCAA tournament field, one final point before we sign off here. And you're already rubbing your eyes because I know that this is not a thing that you are a fan of. It's not a thing I'm a fan of. We are a college basketball podcast. We do have to talk about this. And the NCAA has come out and said that they are, I don't remember the exact verbiage, but seriously looking into is what I'm going to say, expanding the field to 72 or 76 teams for the NCAA tournament. And I have no words at this point. Cope, I'm gonna try though, and then I'm gonna let you go. I think this is gonna be the perfect way to encapsulate the feelings that we both have. There's been expansion on several sports playoffs over the last decade plus. I've seen MLB's expanded a couple times to the three wild card format that it has now. The college football playoff most recently now is 12 teams, and I think that's going to go really, really well, especially with these home sites coming up next week. I'm very excited for the college football playoff being 12 teams. And of course, it expanded to four, however long that ago that was. I think it was 2012, 2014. So it was something in that range where they first expanded it. The NBA and the NHL, they've been at eight for a while, but there has been some expansion of these sports over the last few years. And I get it, you want more competition. Obviously, as we talked about before, things come down to money. Even the NCAA tournament has expanded from 64 to 68 teams over the last decade or two. And that's gone pretty well. It's gone pretty well. You got these play-in games that have generated some buzz up in Dayton. Those are a fun thing. Cope, the NCAA tournament is perfect. There is no need to change the best postseason event in sports If you want to argue that the Stanley Cup playoffs are on there too, I will give you that because I personally love the Stanley Cup playoffs. I don't think there's any better professional sports playoffs than the Stanley Cup playoffs. But 1A and 1B. But for all intents and purposes, we'll call the NCAA tournament the best postseason in sports. There is no need to tinker with it. There is no need to alter it. There is no need to attempt to make something better that cannot be made better. It is like the equivalent of the Grand Canyon in terms of national parks. And as Theodore Roosevelt said when he wanted to make the Grand Canyon a national park, when he set his gaze on it, that there is no need to touch it. There is no need to expand on it. There is no need to do anything to it. It is perfect the way it is. And the NCAA tournament is the Grand Canyon of sports. So I don't have a better comparison to that. There's no need to try to make this an event that is just for the power conferences. The fun of the event is that these mid majors who get in and these low majors who get in can have success. And the reason why the NCAA wants there to be more teams is that more teams on the bubble, like these Big East teams, Big Ten teams, SEC, ACC, obviously the Pac-12 doesn't exist anymore for now, but that's the reason why they want this to expand. And Cope, I know we're getting a little long here, but I do want you to make your point too. Tell me all your feelings, let it out, because this is one of the dumber things that has happened in recent memory.
Yeah, and even with the expansion to 68, like it enhanced the tournament. It did.
Yes.
Because you're seeing a VCU and you're seeing a UCLA. LaSalle made a Sweet 16. Like there's success with it that it adds something and then it showed it was a good addition. But I'm worried that it might get watered down if we continue to add teams. And I've been consistent with the we shouldn't do it, we shouldn't do it, we shouldn't do it. But Kyle, I'm going to play devil's advocate for 1 second and do something that's probably unlike me.
Hmm.
Do we think that if we see a St. Joe's, a Temple, a LaSalle, like when you see these schools that have a hard time getting an at-large, if it were to benefit one of them, we'd probably look at this through a different lens.
Potentially, but I think the other lens to look at it is they should be able to earn an at-large bid in a field of 68 if they are good enough to be in the tournament.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of the allure to it as well. Like it's naturally like it's hard, and that's what makes it great is that the whole year we're like, selection Sunday, the buildup goes for days, and you have a team that loses in a conference tournament on Tuesday or Wednesday, and you sit there holding your breath for 5 days, probably getting no sleep. Like the anticipation around it is great, and I don't think it should be toyed with. But at the same time, Kyle, and again, this is probably very unlike me as well. Like if it were to happen and we have four play-in games a day or three play-in games a day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe. Me personally, I'm not going to say no because I think it would probably be
Like,
electric to see more
yeah.
play-in games and get more March Madness. But if I'm going to stay consistent, it's perfect the way it is. Everybody is trying to be this tournament. Every format is changed or added or whatever to try and emulate this tournament. It's the gold standard and the template that everybody is trying to use. It's perfect. Nobody's ever complained about. Well,
There's
us
a couple people who
fans have
complained.
not complained about the tournament the way it is because it delivers every year. But when people don't get in, and some of it is warranted, when you have like when I talked to Chris Mooney at the A10 tournament, when a school like Richmond and A10 schools in general and AAC schools in general are kind of at a disadvantage when the Power Four schools have more opportunities to play good games, they're upset about it, and that's warranted. But
But
it's a
who do you
hard
think these opportunities are going to go to if this field does expand? It's going to go to the power conference teams who want this to happen in the first place.
And that's my biggest problem with it is that I don't think you're going to get more good stories of mid majors. Like
You
you
might
like
get one more, maybe two at most.
we're gonna it's gonna be less Indiana States and it's gonna be more teams that are like next four out that are going to get in that maybe don't deserve it anyway. That it's like, do they have any good quad one wins? Like, what was the record in conference when they had opportunities to do so? And that's my biggest problem with it is that if we was going to allow more mid and low majors more access to it for having a good season, but just being in a smaller league, that's where I really really sour on the idea because I know that is what's going to happen. It's going to be the money, the schools that have money and have the TV and have the national attention are going to get the spots, and that's not, and maybe that's not deserved for them. So
Yeah.
let's keep it the way it is, but they're not listening to us anyway, and they're going to do
No.
it. It's going to come down to money, just like everything else does. And all I'm going to be at the end of the day, Kyle, is that Simpsons meme where it says "old man shakes his fist at the sky."
But I also like don't think it's just going to be like that. I think everyone other than the power school and those conferences commissioners are going to be upset about it because it's objectively not a good thing because they're only doing it as much as, you can say that you hope that other mid majors can use those at large to get in and have their, little Cinderella stories. Would love that. That's the point of March. And that's what makes March Madness March Madness. But that's not going to happen because everything is about money and it's going to be the power conference teams. I think Greg Sankey last year said something about it where he was kind of comparing it to the SEC commissioner, for those of you who are unfamiliar, but compared it to, when he was talking about the college football playoffs while expanding, like, and obviously Alabama didn't get in, and that's probably their biggest conglomerate in the football world, but like, it's for that. It's
Mhm.
for the power schools who are like, for example, and I don't want to talk bad about one of our own, but did Villanova deserve to get in the tournament last year? They might have gotten in the tournament if it was 76 teams.
Yeah, for being two
Maybe.
games over 500, like respectfully, like that's not a year I think that warrants you being in the tournament.
Yeah, they were on the bubble up until their loss in the Big East tournament. No, they did not deserve to be in the NCAA tournament last year. What was it, 17 and 15 was their final record?
I think it was eight, was it
18 and 16?
18 and 16?
Yeah, not a tournament team. They
Yeah, it's
might have
not
gotten in
tournament.
if the field was 76. So that's what I'm saying. And I would have loved to have seen Villanova in the tournament, Cope. We have not seen a team from the Big Five in the tournament since we've started this podcast. But they need to deserve it. And I would feel worse if they got in and they didn't deserve it than if they got in the current format. That's all I'm saying. And I'm sure we can go on and on and on about it. I'm going to cut us off from that
Mhm.
discussion now because we're definitely running a little long here. We appreciate you guys listening, of course. But yeah, hopefully they leave it alone. I don't think that's going to be the reality of it, but regardless. Cope, any final thoughts before we sign off here?
None. Let's go watch some football. Good luck to everybody in the fantasy playoffs. Um, shout out Bo Nix. Shout out Bo Nix. Potentially can clinch the playoffs, all but clinch the playoffs with a win this week. Shout out Bo Nix. Merry Christmas to you.
Cope, I gotta give it to Bo Nix. I gotta give it to the Broncos. I gotta give credit where credit's due. Um, my only shout out is to the GOAT, the newest New York Met, Juan Soto. Thank you for choosing the Mets. Thank you for choosing the right side of New York. Uh, no greater feeling in Jeff passing tweet notifications than that, and when they traded for and signed Francisco Lindor. Those were uh, I just had to talk about that for a second. That doesn't happen too often. We beat the Yankees in something pretty significant. So not that that's the takeaway of it. The takeaway is that we got a generational superstar. But shout out to Juan Soto. Shout out to the Mets. Thank you for making my Sunday night that much better. Um, and like you said, Cope, let's go watch some football. I think I was looking at the score. It's a 3-0 game between the Niners and the Rams just before halftime. So it's kind of a crummy one, but we're gonna watch it anyway. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. Make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you check us out on audio only versions on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Check us out on social media at Big Five Pod on Twitter and Instagram. And go watch some Big Five basketball this weekend. We'll see you next time.